January 27, 1958. As Rachel Carson, a marine biologist and author, opened the letter she had received from Olga Huckins, an old friend of hers, a complaint about DDT was not what she was expecting to hear about. In the 1940s, farmers in Europe and North America started using the chemical pesticide dichlorodiphenyl trichloroethane, DDT, to eliminate crop-eating bugs after Swiss chemist Paul Hermann Mueller discovered its insecticidal properties in 1939. When Massachusetts ordered DDT to be sprayed around the state, Huckins found a number of her favorite birds dead in her yard the morning after. Knowing a close friend, Rachel Carson, who was an environmentalist, Huckins quickly wrote to Carson about the situation, who decided to look deeper into the matter. The further Carson delved into the issue, the more her evidence pointed at DDT as a source of the troubles. Even though DDT helped control the spread of malaria, Rachel Carson alerted the public and reversed their opinion on the dangers of DDT. Spurred to advocacy after writing her book, Silent Spring, Carson demonstrated leadership by challenging the methods of the chemical industries which led to the environmental movement, leaving a legacy of environmental awareness. At an early age, Carson decided she wanted to be a writer. After completing college in marine biology, Carson became an aquatic biologist in Maryland, but devoted her extra time to writing. By 1955, she had completed 3 books, one of which stayed on the bestseller list for 86 weeks, winning the National Book Award. For the 20 years that DDT had been in use, no one had pointed out the dangers of it because it was advertised as harmless by the government and chemical industries. After Carson was introduced to its dangers by Huckins, she wanted to inform the public about the truth behind DDT and decided to publish her findings. Carson had gained popularity with her previous books and realized she'd be taking a huge risk writing against a chemical regarded by the country as a miracle. Even so, Carson wrote to a friend saying, "But knowing what I do, I have no choice but to set it down to be read by those who will." So she decided that, no matter what negativity would come with it, this story was one that had to be told. After long years of research, Carson discovered many additional problems linked to DDT. Other pesticides during the time were only capable of killing a couple of different kinds of insects, while DDT was able to destroy hundreds at once. Though this came at a cost, DDT killed many different animals, also posing risks to human health. Carson's various attempts at publishing her ideas in multiple magazines were rejected, until she was finally accepted to write in the New Yorker. She then published a short article explaining her discoveries about DDT, which received immediate negative response from critics. Although most disagreed with her beliefs, Carson ignored their doubts in her and stuck with her cause. She decided to write a book to further emphasize her findings, which she later titled Silent Spring. In 1960, Carson learned that she had breast cancer. She was also suffering from partial blindness and a few other medical conditions. While courageously battling health issues, Carson was determined to warn the public to the dangers of pesticides and the vulnerability these chemicals pose to a fragile ecosystem. These were not the only struggles Carson was going through during that time. One after another, her sister, niece, and mom passed away with only months between each other's deaths. After many years of writing and investigating about DDT, Silent Spring was finally completed in late September of 1962. The first chapter vividly illustrated a town fallen upon the shadow of death caused by DDT. It created an overnight reaction. Carson hadn't expected Silent Spring to be as popular as her other books, but within 2 months, over 106,000 copies had been sold. Although many people appreciated her work and listened to her advice, there were also plenty that disapproved of it.
A suggestion that pesticides are in fact biocides, destroying all life, is obviously absurd.
The industries attempted to discredit Carson, spending what was equivalent to $1.4 million in today's money to do so. Meanwhile, Monsanto an agricultural company supporting DDT, even went as far as to write a brochure entitled The Desolate Year, attempting to mimic the way Silent Spring was written, but instead raising the issue that bugs would overrun the world after chemical pesticides were banned. There were many additional attacks from politicians and the media, with support from the government. Despite the fact that Rachel Carson was suffering from cancer and dealing with the loss of her loved ones, she still endured the animosity the nation posed towards her. This truly demonstrated her leadership and tolerance, even with the hardships in her personal life. In May of 1963, CBS hosted Rachel Carson and half a dozen senior members of the government on a broadcast concerning Silent Spring. The government officials tried a countless number of ways to make the public go against Carson's work, but ended up appearing overconfident and ignorant to the nation as they spoke ill of Carson's findings. About 10 to 15 million people watched the hour-long broadcast, and for the weeks following that, Carson and CBS received hundreds of letters in her support, while the government officials got bitter ones. After going through multiple stages of cancer treatments, Carson was getting weak but pushed herself towards her goals of spreading her knowledge about DDT. By the end of 1963, Carson was beginning to be honored for her leadership in protecting the environment and received the Collin Medal from the American Geographical Society, Paul Barch Award, and the Audubon Medal. After years of trying to communicate her knowledge, people finally regarded her as a woman with true leadership. Already weak from breast cancer, in January 1964, Carson caught a respiratory virus, and from there, it only worsened. In February, doctors discovered she had severe anemia as a result of numerous radiation treatments. She ended up dying of a heart attack on April 14, 1964. Carson once told a friend that the only thing she regretted in her life was if she could have reached the point where she was 10 years before. In a way, she still lives on. Silent Spring led to the creation of the Environmental Protection Agency in 1970, the development of the Endangered Species Act in 1973, and pesticide and chemical warning labels. Also in 1970, 6 years after the death of Rachel Carson, Earth Day was first celebrated with 20 million participants. Inspiring the generations who followed her to show responsibility in caring for the environment is just part of Rachel Carson's legacy. Carson motivated people, young and old, to be activists and caretakers of the environment, to build a consciousness for all creatures in the living world.
In the middle of the 20th century, you could, of course, spray any chemical pesticide on the market with absolute abandon. There was no Endangered Species Act, no Marine Mammal Protection Act, no National Wilderness System, no Clean Water or Clean Air Act. We've come so far in the last 50 years.
DDT helped control the spread of malaria, and Rachel Carson fought against the careless usage of it. Many people claim that in doing so, she helped get DDT banned and caused the deaths of the millions who died afterwards from malaria. Instead, Carson only fought for DDT to be monitored, not banned completely. In her book, Silent Spring, Carson stated,
"It is not my contention that chemical insecticides must never be used. I do contend that we have put poisonous and biologically potent chemicals indiscriminately into the hands of persons largely or wholly ignorant of their potentials for harm."
Rachel Carson took a stand to change the public's opinion and warned them about the dangers of DDT. Her work encouraged the environmental movement, and the multiple struggles she was facing during the time didn't stop her from leaving an impact. Carson's leadership in exposing the truth about DDT's dangers changed the way people thought of the environment and helped them realize they all had a part in protecting it. She sought policies that would not only protect the environment, but human health as well. It was only until after Carson spoke up for what she thought was right that the government set limitations on the misuse towards the environment. Numerous organizations continue to carry the legacy of the woman who single-handedly led an environmental movement against an entire nation of critics. Her voice still continues to be heard by many people today.